today, I see so many students get engaged.
Those state representatives and state senators, they are benefiting from the men and women that's incarcerated.
That the people of this state are fairly represented and given the opportunity to impact the policies that drive life in the communities in which they live.
Are you awoke today? If you're awoke, I need you to say, I am awoke. And we will have it no longer. We will demand that they do fair mapping.
If the maps is spread out and it resembles a spider, then there is gerrymandering occurring.
Those are the words of the law. And they must give Black voters an opportunity to elect the candidate of their choice. There are 6 congressional districts in the state, which includes 1 minority district.
I'm a veteran. I fought for this country. I love our country. However, I want my children to have the same equal rights as your children do.
There must be a fair representation of Louisiana's Black community in order to finally address the state's pervasive and ongoing record of inequality of opportunity across various aspects of life.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for tuning in into Real Politics of Redistricting in Louisiana, brought to you in collaboration with the Power Coalition for Equity and Justice and the Bayou Progressive. Power Coalition is a statewide civic engagement table that works to mobilize voters of color across the state of Louisiana. And currently, we are knee-deep within the redistricting cycle. Our fight we'll discuss later within the program, and we'll bring you updates on exactly what we're doing to fight for fair and an equitable say and how all Louisianians should be able to be governed. The Bayou Progressive is a nonprofit publication focused on politics and government in South Louisiana. And the debut issue of the Bayou Progressive launches tonight at midnight at bayouprogressive.com and will focus heavily on redistricting. What brings me to why we are here. You have heard it time and time again that the redistricting cycle and this process is critical, and the moment is crucial in which we are currently in at this moment. So what is redistricting? In case you're unfamiliar, here's a quick 1-minute refresher. Now, that's redistricting in a nutshell. And I know it was a lot of information and a lot to really digest. But if you are unfamiliar, again, with the information and the amount of time that it was presented, don't worry. We will make that video available for everyone that's tuned in right now. And the information will be available shortly after the broadcast is complete. In the meantime, I do advise you to go to powercoalition.org, click the redistricting tab where there is a plethora of different resources and information for you. But to summarize the redistricting process, in short, after census data is collected and provided to the federal government, it's then provided to the state. The redistricting process is a process that happens every 10 years that determines the way the lines are drawn, district lines to be specific, in every single level of government. It definitely influences fair representation because the outcome of this process determines who is elected, how they may potentially vote, and also it determines what assets or lack of thereof would be available within your community. And we know as individuals, we don't live single issue lives. So the outcome of this process determines the next decade as it relates to resources, healthcare, resources for the school system, infrastructure, centering all Louisianan families, and more. We also want to break through the noise and bring you an honest snapshot of what's going on during the redistricting process, both at the state and local level. To provide some context about who I am again, my name is Janea Jamison, and I'm Director of Programs with the Power Coalition for Equity and Justice. And I manage primarily all voting and advocacy, streamlining all program practices, and making sure that all Louisianan voices are heard at the state capitol. So in short, redistricting is a multifaceted process that occurs again at almost every level of government here in Louisiana. That includes the local school boards and city councils as well. But this isn't a backroom process. Your voice is needed too. And the Power Coalition has been leading that grassroots fight, and the fight for an equitable process and fair maps in parishes across the state, giving citizens a platform to utilize and amplify their voices and to ensure that they are being heard. So here to tell you what we've been doing at the local levels of redistricting and how you can get involved is our Baton Rouge and faith-based organizer, Caitlin Joshua. Caitlin, thank you so much for joining tonight.
Excited to be here and excited to have so many folks streaming in online. I am here to talk about the engagement we have been able to create in East Baton Rouge Parish. As y'all know, municipalities across the state, localities are redistricting their school boards, their metro councils, their city councils, and their police jurors. In East Baton Rouge Parish, Power Coalition for Equity and Justice has been participating in the redistricting process by organizing communities to use their voice and actively engage. Advocacy groups in East Baton Rouge Parish, we met with demographer Mike Hefner to discuss the needs and gaps of the community and the expectations we have for this process to ensure that it's both transparent and easily accessible for the public to plug in. Anyone can meet with the board's director and express their concerns, and we invite you to do so. The East Baton Rouge Parish School Board released a timeline for the redistricting workshops a couple weeks ago, and they are rocking and rolling. The first board workshop session took place on Saturday, February 5th. We were in attendance, and the next one will take place this Saturday, February 12th. You may find the timeline on ebrschools.org or on powercoalition.org. We invite you to join in a session, even if it's just one session, y'all. Make sure your voice is heard. In the meantime, we will continue hosting informationals on how to draw a fair and equitable map. We will provide one-click and rapid responses for folks looking to stay involved with the process, and we'll continue meeting with school board members to make sure we're conveying all of your concerns and questions are answered. We invite you to join our meetings and check our website for future dates.
Thank you so much again, Caitlin, for that update. And here to help us understand what that process really is. So again, thank you so much. We also have with us a dynamic panelist this evening, Councilwoman Shauna Banks and East Baton Rouge School Board member Tramel Howard. Councilwoman Banks serves on the Metropolitan Council in East Baton Rouge, representing Council District 2. She is a Baton Rouge native and a graduate of the Southern University, receiving her bachelor and master's from Southern University and A&M College in Baton Rouge. And she's also a graduate from Southern University Lab High School. Tramel Howard, born and raised in Baton Rouge, is a member of the East Baton Rouge Parish School Board in Louisiana, representing District 3. He assumed office in 2019 and also serves as the State Director of the Education Trust. And finally, we have Terry Jones of The Advocate. Terry has been covering the redistricting process in Baton Rouge at the school board and Metro Council levels. He also covers local government more broadly and has been particularly focused on Baton Rouge's evolving and shifting populations, a key beat to cover if you're also going to cover redistricting. So thank you all again so much for joining us tonight, this evening, within your busy schedules. I'm so excited to get started. So first, I would like to begin with Terry. So Terry, again, you cover redistricting in Baton Rouge locally. And I have a two-part question to get started with you. How does the redistricting process differ from statewide and congressional redistricting process? And based on your reporting, what have been your top key takeaways from the process on the Metro Council and school board in EBR so far?
Okay, well, first, I don't cover it on the school board level in terms of like day-to-day coverage, but I do keep up with kind of what's been going on. That's another reporter by the name of Charles Lashir. I handle basically the Metro Council. And basically, right now the Metro Council is in the very beginning stages of getting into the redistricting fight. I think that, and I say fight because I do think that this is going to be one of the most prevailing issues that the Metro Council will deal with this year. And also, I think it's going to be very interesting to see how they handle it. The Metro Council, as it currently stands, has been kind of more harmonious. They've really been getting along. There haven't been a lot of infighting or the pettiness that was there since there have been the shift within leadership when a lot of the old council members termed out and new council members came in. So I'm very interested to see how they're going to handle this upcoming discussion around redistricting, which is going to be, I think, very passionate on both sides. From what I've seen with the school board so far, in my observation of just what's been going on, I know that they've changed demographers before. I know that there's been a lot of discussion around a lot of the majority minority districts and not having enough representation. I know just last night, Councilwoman Shauna Banks showed a video in which there was a lot of discussion around the fact that a majority white school board should not be governing the day-to-day decisions of a majority Black school district. As we turn to the city parish, obviously the Metro Council is going to be working with the same census data that the school board is working with. And currently that stands at whites having 42.9% of the population and Blacks representing 46.3% of the population. And some of the reporting I've done thus far as they head into their redistricting discussions, it seems like some of the Metro Council members, of course, the Black Democrats, feel that there should probably be at least two majority minority districts. And then some feel at least definitely one more, so that would balance the Metro Council representation out. I think that that's where you will see a lot of the discussion heading into this. There's already been, I want to say threats, but I know some local groups have, like the NAACP, have already said if they don't give us what we know we should have, we will sue them. And so that is the looming factor over all of this as they head into their discussions.
Terry, thank you so much for that. And, I definitely can attest to, the makeup of the Metro Council and the dynamics. I started off in Baton Rouge politics, being a legislative aide for District 5, then under the leadership of Councilwoman Erica Green around 2016 through 2018 or 2015, I believe. But again, what's clear is that the makeup of the Metro Council does not rightfully, represent the constituency within Baton Rouge. Baton Rouge is a predominantly African-American city, and it's very difficult to get resolutions and policies passed on the table. And again, it's about representation. It's about population shifts and the demographics to ensure that minority voices are heard. So thank you again for that coverage and providing that information. So I know currently Councilwoman Shauna Banks, unfortunately, she is not on yet. I hope that she does hop on. But thank you again for providing that insight, at least at the local level for EBR Metro Council. And so with that being said, again, I do want to welcome EBR Parish School Board member Tremel Howard. And speaking of school boards, and you briefly did mention this as well, Terry. But speaking of school boards, it has been traditionally and sometimes notoriously a variety of political fault lines, right? And this ranges from the battle over the role of charter schools to more recent fights over COVID protocols and such. So, what are the fault lines you are noticing during the current redistricting process?
So thank you so much, guys, for the opportunity to be here. Janea, and Terry, and Shauna in her absence at the moment. So it's just like everything else when you think about like systemic issues. Like this is a systemic issue. We've seen gerrymandering and redlining and all of those things affect how we govern and the opportunity to have representation. I think one of the major fault lines for me is that you are, as a board member, as a Black board member, one of my goals is to increase minority representation to reflect the school district that we currently serve. But in order for that to collectively pass, you have to have now a majority white district basically relinquish their power within fixing the particular district and fixing the representation. And so I think the major fault line is that you're asking a system that was designed to do exactly what it's doing to correct itself. And something that we just really have to think about as we think about like the strategic way of engagement with our community in order to ensure that we have correct representation on the school board.
Thank you so much for that. And again, it's ensuring that everyone is rightfully so represented, that there's equity within this overall process. And I think you did hint on that, one of your main priorities is to fight for that additional representation. But when we look at that overall process, Mr. Howard, what are some other priorities for school board redistricting for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's the ultimate priority for us. And as a collective Black Caucus of School Board members, we've talked about like how do we ensure that we increase minority representation so that the voice of our community inside of our schools is represented on our school board. And I think that has to be the overarching priority. But the priority is to really increase that minority representation. And we use the word minority loosely, but really the minorities are the majority in this particular situation. So one of the priorities is to figure out how to increase that voice to make sure that the community is allowed to elect the people to represent them on the school board. And that may look different. So another priority in our way is like, how do we increase representation? And that may be by doing things differently. So right now we have a 9-member board. So there is a lot of talk about increasing the number of seats by increasing the number of board members. So we're elected by 9 single member districts. Like how do we get additional representation? So that may mean that the school board goes from 9 to 11 members. And so I think that has been our major priority, and making sure as a collective that we give individuals an opportunity to engage with this process, to be as transparent as possible, and to really make sure the voice of the collective community is heard throughout this process, even though some may say, it's short, it's rushed, but we know that we have to get it done. We're in an election year. Qualifying begins in July. So in order to give people not only the opportunity to elect them, but also to give candidates the rightful time to be have run a diligent campaign, like we have to move with a sense of urgency, but also doing this collectively with the community.
Thank you. Thank you so much for providing that insight. And I just want to hone in on, again, something that you said, that, that additional representation in those 11 districts. We know that, the Power Coalition and other advocacy groups have been pushing for that 11 district bench, and some even 15 districts, And so we know that in order to get there, it will be a difficult task. It will be made out of compromise and all of these things. But I do thank you as a leader for recognizing that, and, the steps that you have to take it as an elected official along with your colleagues in order to get there. So saying that to say, can citizens be able to be involved within this process, such as submitting public testimony? With the statewide process at the legislature, there is an opportunity for folks to actually email. If they're unable to attend meetings, they can then submit in written testimony and things of that nature. And so I'm sure at the local level, folks still want to be able to be connected. And sometimes attending a in-person meeting, it's unfortunate, it's very difficult. We know that we live have multiple responsibilities and such. So is there some type of portal or a system where folks can be able to input public testimony and input for the school board?
Yeah, absolutely. And so one of the things that I really appreciate about this process is that we've developed something that's pretty new, in the sense that we now have a system called Maptitude. And so it's an opportunity for the public to actually go onto the EBR website and create their own maps of what they believe the district should look like. And there's a whole tool that allows you to say, hey, if the plan that you submit is legal, like what are like the fault lines and all of the things that could create based off of the plan you submit. You can start from scratch. You can start with the foundation. It's a really cool tool. And actually, we are in the middle of a redistricting meeting right now. And so we are learning like the ins and outs of the system. But I think the public needs to be aware that on EBR, www.ebrschools.org, there's actually a tab on the home screen, if you scroll over, that is specifically targeted or named redistricting. And it gives you a list of all the opportunities to publicly engage. It gives you a list or a link to Maptitude. And the contact information of board members are there. So feel free to email the board members as it relates to like what you think and the issues that you have. And we're constantly engaging with Mr. Hefner, who is our demographer, as we think through these things. And I think that one of the things that's important for the public to know is like that this engagement is necessary. And like I said, like we're already at a disadvantage as it relates to like the number of votes we have on the board to make what we believe to be true as a priority in these conversations that we're having about the politics of it. And so that voice from the community is definitely necessary. And so we've had support from groups like the NAACP and all of the legal fund folks who are interested in helping us to make sure that we carve out a map that is representative of the population we serve and really giving folks an opportunity at fair representation, specifically on the school board.
Thank you. Thank you. And just for clarity, once certain maps are submitted or approved, I know you mentioned Maptitude and the portal and how easily accessible it is. Another tool, Dave Redistricting, is a tool as well. But for clarity, once these maps are submitted, can folks go online to the EBR Parish School Board and then view those maps? Or is Maptitude only available for folks to use the technology and potentially submit their own maps?
So Maptitude is available for folks to submit their technology as it relates to their own maps. There is something that clarifying information that needs to occur as to how many maps will be available for people to just view to start working from other maps that other folks have been or have submitted. I will clarify that information for you and get that information to you. I know for sure that they can submit their own maps. I'm not sure if they'll be publicly available to see all of the additional maps that will be provided on the particular website or that other folks have submitted. Because what I think to be true about the system is that like you could get a way where there's 1,000 maps submitted, and I don't know if the system can even house to be able to let everyone view that. But I'll double check with that information and clarify that information for you.
Thank you, because I do think that will be useful for the public. For instance, when maps have been submitted on the statewide, the state legislature, people are able to submit them and they're viewable. So, I would like to possibly get a follow up so that, folks can have access to it along the process. And like you mentioned, it may be a speedy process. So
Sure.
Again, thank you for providing that information and also agreeing to look further in that so that it can become more accessible for the general public to see things as they're being approved. And so again, thank you so much, Mr. Howard, for your input, for your leadership and your strategy and different things that you've mentioned tonight. And Terry, I really would like to come back to you in closing out as we're looking at the local redistricting process. But based on your reporting, what should we be looking out for next regarding redistricting on the local level and specifically the school board? Because, you did clarify that you've been covering the school board more rather than the opposite. You've been covering the
Council
more than the school board. So what should we be looking out on the local level for EBR Metro Council?
Oh yeah, great. That's a great question. So basically, on February 22nd, the Metro Council will hold its first public redistricting meeting. And that's literally the first time where I think that they will meet with the demographer, which is the same demographer that the school board is using, Mr. Hefner, and the talks will begin. There was a lot of discussion about this last night in regards to what happens next. There was talk of having single district meetings, with community members. There was talk of maybe having multiple public meetings where people can come in and voice their opinions. There was talk of having an online portal as well. Would they be able to submit maps? I think Shauna asked that question. And the city parish does have a very good IT department. And so I'm thinking that that may be a possibility. You can, of course, already submit public comments to the Metro Council members and email them. And I think that, like what Tramel said as well, the public has to be and needs to be very, very engaged in this process. And it should be, at the end of the day, what they have to remember is that it doesn't matter really who the demographer is. The demographer works for the Metro Council, and the Metro Council is the final vote on whatever maps are decided. And they are the ones that are to be held accountable for the decisions that are made. And so I think that showing up to these public meetings, the February 22nd one would be great, submitting those comments, letting them know how you feel. One of the things that I did mention when I was speaking before was that, yeah, I did break down the percentages that they are working with, which showed that 42%, 0.9% of the population is white, 46.3 is black. But I think that another percentage that's out there as well is that the numbers that they're looking at also break down the racial demographics by persons 18 years and older. Of course, those are the voting population. And I'm thinking that when you look at those figures, whites are at 46.1% and blacks are at 43.7%. So that would then show you that whites have the majority and blacks have the majority if they look at those percentages. So I think it's going to be very important for the public to look at what numbers are being discussed by what council members to determine what they're going to try to do when they try to make up these maps. And you definitely want to be engaged. Of course, I'll be writing about it as it happens. And definitely, if you want your voice to be heard, come to the community meetings. I think that a lot of the council members do want to hear from the community, but they also know that it's going to be a lot of competing interests in this thing. And so, having an ear to your council person, definitely seeing what we're reporting to kind of keep up with everything will be the way to go if you want to stay on top of how this all shapes out with the Metro Council.
So again, thank you to the both of you, Terry Jones with the Advocate, EBR School Board member, Tramel Howard. Before we do close out this segment, though, I do think that it is important to possibly repeat the website and different ways that folks can access what's going on with EBR School Board again. So Mr. Howard, could you please give the website?
Yeah, so the website is www.ebrschools.org. So that's www.ebrschools.org. And I will quickly give over some opportunities for folks to engage coming forward. So we just concluded our board workshop for at the Professional Development Center for engagement. We have another meeting on 2/19/22 at 9 a.m. at Park Elementary related to redistricting. We have another meeting 2/24 at 5 p.m. at the Professional Development Center. Another meeting on 2/26 at 9 a.m. at the IRC building. 3/3/22 is when we are actually going to have a plan that's recommended for approval. And then at the board meeting on 3/17/22 is when we're going to actually vote on the actual approved plan. And our plan has to be submitted to the Secretary of State by June 20th in this year, obviously. And all of this information can be found on the website, but I just wanted to give voice to those things that you will see on the website. And it has a link to Maptitude on that particular page.
Awesome. Again, thank you both so much for your leadership in your own right, for being able to share the needed information with community, being able to amplify the voices of those who are most vulnerable at times throughout this state and within this process, and really sharing the importance of ensuring that additional representation is needed, and that you will fight for that, and that you will report on that and on these issues. And as we mentioned, redistricting is happening at every level here in Louisiana. And it's at the statewide level as well, the state legislature, Congress as well, where many of the headlines have been coming from for good reason, right? And the Power Coalition, we have been at the Capitol every single day. I can attest to it. I've been there all 10 days within this redistricting fight. And the extraordinary session is scheduled to end on February 20th. However, it's been a critical process, right? We've been able to mobilize over 250 folks to the Capitol throughout various road shows, 10 road shows throughout the process. Communities have stressed the importance of having that additional representation and the need to center Black folks and communities of color. And again, it hasn't been an easy fight. As an advocate, it has not been an easy fight for legislators as well. But we do know that it's important that community and our legislative body does align throughout this process, because it determines the next 10 years, the next decade. And it's perhaps one of the most important, because our democracy literally depends on it. So here to update us on the grassroots advocacy happening at the state capitol right now is my colleague, Morgan Shannon. Morgan, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Morgan, we can't hear you. So if you're talking, please unmute yourself.
Thank you. Can you hear me now?
Perfect.
Thank you. Yes, this process has been a long time coming, and the Power Coalition has been hosting and been a pivotal part of this process. We've been hosting political education for about a year and a half around redistricting. Most recently, we wrapped up the road shows, where we had our partners hosting trainings prior to the road shows for over 1,200 people across the state from around about October to January. These last 2 weeks, we've heard extensive testimonies from our base and our partners. And the data is clear. The maps show where possible. There's fair maps that need to be drawn, and equitable representation that shows the reflection of our population. During the first day of session, and the first day of Black History Month, we hosted over 250 people who convened at the Capitol, many who were already in our base, but many we met during the roadshow, and provided them with training. But most importantly, they demanded fair maps. They descended on the Capitol and said, the old way we've been doing things is not right, and we have a new way, and a new way is coming. Black and brown people put their lives on the line, oftentimes what we do, to be able to protect democracy. I have some simple math that I want to share with you that we often share with community, because one of the tenets of the Power Coalition is to meet people where they are. And so we have the second largest population in the country. 33% of our population is Black. We have 6 congressional districts. 1/3 of 6 is 2. We're demanding 2 majority-minority districts. And we really broke it down to people like that. A few things that we heard during this special session, in the next panel, we'll get into this a little bit more. We'll get into this a little bit more clearly. We heard from elected officials who typically do not center equity and justice. They typically do not center the lives of Black and brown people and what's best for them. And we heard that they were trying to protect Black and brown people. However, the maps that they submitted did not reflect that. Let me be clear. There is no protection without representation. You cannot protect me if you do not represent me. And that's the essence of democracy. We will not stand for racist maps. We will keep putting the pressure on those who are in power. And our memories are long. Where we are now is that maps with only one minority district will go before Governor Edwards in the upcoming weeks. The governor has the ability to veto this map. He has the veto power. And he also has said that he would in various mediums. The governors of both Kansas and Kentucky, most recently, who are Democratic governors in Southern or Republican-led states, have vetoed their racist maps. Their vetoes were overturned, but they did what was right for their people. They were on the right side of history. This is what I know. There is a check that needs to be cleared with Governor Edwards. 2019, Black and Brown people were instrumental in getting him into office. The people that we've heard from across the state are ready for that check to be cashed. We will continue mobilizing our base and our partners because that is what we do. We're asking folks to take one clicks. It's a process by which they can demand their elected officials do what's right for redistricting from the courtesy of their home. And we'll keep demanding equity and justice. In the next panel, they will be able to talk about more deeply about the details of the environment that we're in. But we ask you to visit powercoalition.org to get more information around redistricting. Thank you, Janea.
Oh, thank you so much, Morgan, for providing, that insightful status of, what's been going on at the statewide level. And again, while there are some leaders who haven't been centering Black folks within their policy, we're grateful to have partnerships with folks who are amplifying the voices of their constituents and stressing that it is important to have that additional representation and to center Black folks. And I'm excited that they were able to join this panel tonight. So here to help us understand the redistricting process at the state level and all of the things that it entailed within the process going on within this extraordinary session is another group of great panelists, right? State Representative Royce Duplessis and State Senator Ed Price. Representative Duplessis represents District 93 in Louisiana House of Representatives. He is a graduate of Xavier and Howard University, and he has been practicing attorney in New Orleans area for years before taking office in 2018. Senator Ed Price is in the state Senate and represents Senate District 2, representing parishes, the river parishes, as we call them: Assumption, Iberville, Lafourche, St. Charles, St. James, St. John the Baptist, and so many more. Senator Price was also raised in Darrow, Louisiana, and has been a supervisor for BASF for more than 30 years. Unfortunately, we were expecting another media person to attend, but unfortunately they are unable to join. But again, thank you all for being leaders, and thank you all for taking the time out to join tonight, because again, I'm at session every single day, and I know that the schedule is very hectic within this time. So thank you all for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
Definitely. And so I'll start off by asking both of you the same question I asked on our earlier panel. So I'll begin with you, Rep. Duplessis. What are your particular priorities for this redistricting session, and why?
Well, my priority is to make the maps, whether it be state house, state senate, Congress, the judiciary, to make those maps look more like Louisiana. And, right now they don't. So, it's pretty straightforward for me. And, we have other rules and guidelines that we have to follow. We have to respect parish boundaries to the extent that we can. We have to respect communities of interest. I don't know every aspect about Northern Louisiana, so I have to rely on my colleagues to help inform me that, hey, if you move this precinct out of this district, that's problematic for that area because those two precincts are connected at the hip. So understanding those nuances, so respecting those local norms and traditions, trying to navigate that, but doing it in a way where we, at the end of this process, are moving in the direction of making the maps look more like Louisiana. It's a slow process, and however we end up at the end of this process, we know it won't look like it should. But my priority and my goal is to move it in a direction towards where it does look more like the state.
Thank you. And thank you for sharing that, just to be clear that the process is strenuous. It's a lot And, again, being there at the Capitol every day, being on the ground, ensuring that community voices are heard. I do hope that we can get to a place that, although not perfect, that we can get as close as possible to that additional representation to reflect Louisiana. And so, Senator Price, I'm going to ask you, that very same question. So what are your priorities for redistricting?
Well, thank you very much for having me. And of course, like Representative Duplessis, uh, I certainly feel that we should move in more towards more minority district. One of the things that we are doing is that to make it that it reflects what the state population is submitting maps to say that we can do this in every aspect of every uh, map that we've drawn. We've shown that we can elect additional minorities in the state, whether it's been the Senate, whether it's been the House of Representatives, whether it's been the Public Service Commission, the Bessie Board, the Supreme Court. We can do those things. So my priority is to make sure that they understand that this state being 1/3 minority now, we had an increase in population in the Black community, and we had a decrease in population in the white community. So now that we are moving forward, we deserve to have that representation. So I'm prioritizing and saying, hey, look, we're going to fight this battle, and we want you all to understand that we will continue. If we can't get it done in the legislature, then we move to the next step, which is possibly the court system, so that we can get fair and equitable maps drawn. So I'm going to continue that fight. I know my colleagues on the House side, Representative Duplessis, and those are going to continue this fight with us. We cannot just sit back and allow them to say that we are not going to draw maps that's fair and equitable to our community. We have to fight. We have to get out. We have to be strong, and we're going to continue that fight. So those are my priority. I want to make sure that we continue this fight. We we know at this point that we're probably not going to get it in the legislature. They are passing maps right now, and we are saying, hey, let's move forward. Let's sit down. Let's talk about maybe we can get an additional minority district here and this, and they're not listening. They are not listening. They are passing what they want to pass. So the next step is going to the court system, and hopefully we can get their hearing and get something done.
Thank you, Senator Price. And again, thank you for being transparent and being very honest in the difficulty within this overall process, but, still standing firm in that fight for that additional representation. And so my next question goes to you, Rep. Duplessis. You did slightly hint that, it is a long process, right? We were told that the redistricting cycle will be February 1st through 20th. But, the schedule is really fluid. We've also heard other narratives, before the start of the session, there was a sense that this process will be rushed or at least quicker than those previously within the past. And so if you could just share with community, do you feel that this process, in your opinion, has it been rushed? And if it has, then is community input still vital at this moment that we're in right now?
Well, this is my first redistricting session. I've never been through one before, and very few members of the current legislature have. I mean, you could probably count them on one hand. Certainly not more than two hands. But whether we are rushing or not, I'm reluctant to say that we are, and I will say this: not every state has conducted a roadshow. Now, I have my feelings in terms of whether or not the those in leadership and those in the majority were actually listening to what was being said at the roadshow. In fact, it's pretty clear that they didn't. I heard the roadshow, so the process started some time ago, but the session itself, they set out 20 days. And I know a lot of people were concerned when that first schedule came out that we were going to get through it in 5 days. I never for once thought that we were going to get through this thing in 5 days. And I'm sure Senator Price, who is a veteran and has been around longer than I have, will attest to the fact that when you're negotiating and when you are in intense debates, these things have a tendency to drag out. And I have every reason to believe that we're probably going to be here to the final day. I hope that we're not. I hope we can get some result. I mean, we might not, but I think we're going to get close. I mean, tomorrow's Friday. So I say all that to say that I think if those in the majority had it their way, they would like to rush this thing through and just and be done with it and just go forward. Because I think many of them know this is going to unfortunately likely end up in litigation. But thankfully, we have dedicated organizations and leaders like the Power Coalition and so many others who have been on the ground, been involved just as much as we have been, and y'all have been present and at the table to be the voice for the community, because it's a lot to ask citizens to take off work and to come in and to testify, sit in committee for hours and hours. You don't know when you're going to get called up to testify. People have families, they have lives, they have things that they have to do. So the fact that you all are being there, being that voice, I think helps the process. It keeps a check and balance on the process, even though it is moving a little faster than normal. I would not. I'm reluctant to say that it's going as fast as they would like it to go, if that makes sense.
Right. And
Yeah.
being there every day, I can definitely attest to that myself as well. And the next question that I'll go into, and I think both of you have really hinted around it, right? The difficulty and the differences and things like that as it relates to priorities, as with some of your other colleagues. But what would you say are the distinct political dynamics of your respective chambers during this fight? And do the politics look the same in both chambers? And are those chambers moving in sync? Or is there a stark contrast between the chambers?
Well, if you want me to go first this time, it's absolutely that they are trying to maintain control. There's no doubt that right now in the Senate they have 27 Republicans, and that's a supermajority. And I think their goal is also to gain a supermajority in the House of Representatives. And they say, oh, well, the politics is not there, and we don't do it by parties. But absolutely, when you look at the maps that have been drawn, they want to maintain control. They want to keep a supermajority in both houses so that they can, hopefully, they would think they can override any veto of the governor by having that supermajority. So yes, it seems to me that that's one of their goals. But as I said, we have to continue to fight these type of things that they're putting forth. It's no need. The state need to be represented by the people. We are 1/3 minority in this state, and I think we need to continue to fight to do that. And of course, they want to maintain control. That's their goal. I see it all the time that they want to maintain control and keep that power. So we have to, as the minority, say, hey, look, we want our fair share. We want fair and equitable maps, and we're going to continue to fight for that.
Thank you, Senator Price. And all in all, again, we have been stressing just to create an opportunity out of everything, and so Senator, thank you so much for that transparent answer and that honest answer. Rep. Duplessis, do you have anything you would like to add?
Yeah, no, I think Senator Price hit it on the head. In terms of any distinctions between our chambers, there's no difference in the fact that whether you're in the House or the Senate, control is what this is all about. And to get things done around here, you have to have a majority in most cases. And it's really good when you have a supermajority, because that means the other side really doesn't matter. You don't even have to talk to the other side. In this case, it will be our side. So that is the clear goal on both the House and the Senate side. I will say that I envy the Senate to the extent that, because it's fewer of them, and I think because it's fewer of them, they can come together a little easier. I know they still have their disputes amongst themselves, but on our side, there are 105, so it's tougher to get not only bipartisan support, but it's even tougher to get support and agreement within your own caucus whether that's the Democratic caucus, the Black caucus, whatever issue it is you're working on, when you're dealing with more people, it's just more difficult. And the leadership on the Senate side, even though they're in smaller numbers, they seem to be able to stand together a little more. And I think that's one of the differences that you'll see as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I can definitely say, in order for us to get to a better place, as both of you have hinted, it's important that everyone is aligned and in unison
Yep.
moving forward throughout this process. And so, Rep. Duplessis, can you characterize the likeliest maps to get real consideration, and where can people find them?
The likeliest maps to give real consideration. What do you? I mean, well, every map is going to get a hearing. Now, the ones that make it out of committee, based on reality of this place, are going to likely be the ones that are authored by those in the majority, because unfortunately, it's red or green, and in today's politics, just like we see it up in Washington, same thing is happening here in Baton Rouge. It's one or the other. There's not many in between, and there's I'm not saying it's not some compromise, but this is some pretty high stakes stuff. And certain bills have already been decided that this is going to be the bill that the majority is going to get behind. And those, if you're not on the majority side and you want something else, it's not even coming out of committee. So when you say what's getting real consideration, every bill will get a hearing, but will it get real consideration? I don't think so. We have Congress that we just voted on today in the House. It received 70 votes, which is not a good thing. 33 against. And we are likely to vote on our state House map tomorrow. We've already voted on PSC and Bessie. So from the House side, our bills are moving right along. Now, the good thing is that some of our members still have bills that are going to be heard in committee on tomorrow. So, we're just going to keep pushing. We're just going to keep pushing.
Right. And also, and just to provide some clarity, just for some folks, who aren't familiar with, navigating the state legislative website, they can go to legis.la.gov. And within that website, they'll be able to actually look at the agenda and see what's up in the committee hearings, and see also when the Senate and House convenes, to kind of keep track of those maps, as you mentioned, that are under consideration as well. So again, thank you for providing that information. And and Senator Price, you've hinted in the beginning, but I do want to ask you directly, what's your prediction for what happens next? Will we have new maps in a week, in a month? What's your take on the governor's pulse?
Well, I certainly think we will have new maps by the end of the session. Come next Sunday, I know we are joined today, and we're not coming back until Monday. But when we come in Monday, the president has said that be prepared to work through Sunday. We have to join by 6 p.m. on Sunday, February 20th. So we'll be working day in and day out. They're going to have all their maps passed, no doubt. Their plan is to make sure that they get everything passed through. The congressional maps, there's some discussion about the Supreme Court map, where that's going to go. Of course, it requires a 2/3 vote. That's something people should know. On the Supreme Court maps, it requires a 2/3 vote of both chambers to get that one out. So there's some maneuvering and some things that can happen there if we don't think we have a fair and equitable map for the Supreme Court. Of course, we've asked for 2 additional districts, 2 out of the 7. So we can continue to say, hey, look, if we don't get that, that's one map that may not. But the rest of them, I think they have the vote to pass them out. So we're going to continue that fight. I think the governor has made some commitment that if he doesn't think that they are fair and equitable, then he would also veto some. So then we have to go into a veto session override to see if they can override the governor's decision. From there, of course, there's litigation measures that may have to be taken. And while I'm here, I just want to thank the Power Coalition, the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, the ACLU. You all have provided great testimony. You have showed us that coming together as groups, that things can get accomplished, that we can make some things happen. And without you all out there supporting us, fighting for us, a lot of things will not be happening. So thank you all so much for what you have done. I've enjoyed working with you all day by day and getting us information and the things that we need to go forward and say, look, we have this, here's the data. Here's the everything that we need to say that this state need to move forward with additional districts. So thank you all very much.
And thank you so much for that, Senator Price, because, I know some days I wear my emotions on my face. There's a lot going on in that Capitol, but, again, just to get that reassurance that the work that we do, although it may be tiring, the work that you all do, I know with the dedication, it takes a lot, but thank you so much for recognizing that. And before we do go into closing, I would like to get some final thoughts from you, Rep. Duplessis, as it relates, to any information that you may have on the governor and what are his priorities within all of this as well. Back in January of 2021, the Power Coalition, NAACP, LDF, and others, we actually presented a letter to the governor that, if there is not an additional congressional majority minority district, would he veto? At that time, he did commit to it. Are there any other priorities or anything else you have heard as it relates to the governor and his role within all of this?
Well, one thing that I try my best not to do, and simply because I can't, is speak on behalf of somebody else. And I never try to say what the governor will or won't do. I can only share information that in most cases has been already publicly shared when people ask him what his views are with respect to what he will accept and what he won't accept. I do think I can say, and I wouldn't be speaking out of school by saying this, that if a bill passes, particularly on the House side, that he has no desire to get overridden, which I understand. But I think the question that the governor is ultimately going to ask, because those bills will pass, the unfavorable bills will pass, and they're going to pass with high numbers. I think the question that the governor is going to have to ask himself and answer for himself is he willing to go through being overridden? Is this issue that important whereby he's willing to veto a map and then be overridden? We know that governors and Democratic governors in other conservative states have done that. I know, for example, in Kentucky, the Democratic governor there, he vetoed a map that he didn't find to be fair, and he was then overridden. I think it happened in maybe one other state or possibly more. But I think that's ultimately going to be the question that Governor Edwards has to ask, because these maps will pass. And I don't think the equation should be whether or not the map can be overridden. I'm sure as governor that would not be ideal, but the fact of the matter is, when I heard Senator Cleo Field speak the other day, and he talked about his journey and his history, and having been one of only 4 Black people elected to Congress since the Voting Rights Act here in Louisiana, and how, even before that, I think in 1868, I think it was John Menard, he was elected, but he was never even seated. When you think about our history, and he said it so eloquently that we elect more white people to Congress in a year than we've elected Black people in a lifetime. When you think about the importance of this, to me, I personally believe it's worth taking an override, being overridden, because it means that much, and especially to a base of voters who have played such a role in getting not only the governor to where he is, but so many other elected leaders throughout the state. So those are my thoughts. I don't speak on behalf of the governor, but I do think this is a very important and serious time that we're in.
No, right. And I appreciate that, that perspective and that insight. And I do think that it's important that community gets the real dynamics of what's been happening and what's the possibilities, whether it's in our favor or if it's not in our favor, right? And again, all in all, I do think that it's still critical that community voices are clear on what they want. And I just want to stress again that, the work that we do and the work that you all do, it could not be done without community. So very grateful for, again, each of you for taking the time out tonight and also being very responsive to community members as well. There's never been a time when, if we haven't brought someone to the Capitol, that there wasn't some type of accessibility to really listen to them in depth detail in and even outside of the committee hearings to really understand like why they are here. And really a special shout out to the young folks that have really been involved in this as well. So many amazing students from various HBCUs and LSU and all over throughout the state of Louisiana, even high school students taking that time to be involved and within this process. And again, you all being very open and having that listening ear to listen to each of their concerns. So again, thank you all so much for joining. I know that the schedule is a lot right now. And again, I want to thank all of our guests tonight for participating and, and giving us a snapshot of exactly what's happening during the redistricting process, what's at stake, whose interests are on the line, and how we, the people, can make an impact within this process, because we can't center all Louisianians with ignoring a vast majority of its population, and that includes minority voters, and to be specific, Black voters. And this is what democracy looks like. And it's important that the community knows what's being done within our name. And so I will close out with a few housekeeping items. But again, thank you both to Senator Price, to Rep. Duplessis, to EBR Council Member Jamel Howard, and to Advocate Reporter Terry Jones. And so you've heard over and over again the importance of community voices and your voices being lifted and amplified. I want to stress again that session is expected to end on February 20th, but the work does not stop. If you are still interested in coming to the Capitol and being very vocal, you can still have that opportunity to join committee hearings and share your testimony. If you are, simply afraid to testify in person, or it's just inconvenient for you, you can submit that public testimony to email, and we will provide that information to you as well. And then there's even a more accessible way to get in contact with all of your legislators. If you go to powercoalition.org, you will see the various one-clicks that are there that will give you a true representation of what's at stake and what's up in committee hearings or on the floor. And that way you're able to actually submit testimony and connect directly to your legislators through that one-click campaign and various action items on powercoalition.org. And I also would advise you to follow us on social media. Our Instagram is very active, providing you with all the many ways to stay connected. And you can follow us on Instagram at Power, POWER, COEJ. And we're also on Facebook at the Power Coalition for Equity and Justice. And as a reminder, again, this has been brought to you by the Power Coalition for Equity and Justice and the Bayou Progressive. And you can learn more at our website and follow us on social media, as those handles were already presented to you. And finally, the Bayou Progressive will debut tonight at midnight. And this month, I am super excited for the launch of this online digital media outlet, and it will focus heavily on the very redistricting process that we've been talking about. And so I encourage you all to check it out at bayouprogressive.com. And in closing, again, I'm Janea Jamison, and it has been my honor to moderate this conversation with you tonight. Good night, and I will see you next week at the Capitol.